Hello and welcome to the podcast. We are the Cosmic Commentators and we're here to take a look at all aspects of spirituality, religion and metaphysical concepts.
Hi, I'm Rachel and this is the wonderful Alex. So feel free to join us as we delve deep into the vast subject of life beyond the veil.
So Rachel.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Rachel. What are we going to talk about then today?
Well, I think one of the things for me that I think would be really useful to start looking and talking through is this whole issue with soul traps.
Soul trap.
Yeah. And I suppose as part of the soul trap, we will have to kind of talk a little bit around soul contracts as well.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but my head is in a little bit of a spin at the moment because I think there's just such vast extremist views on, is this planet a soul trap, or do we have free will, and are we allowed to decide our own soul contract and decide when we depart and don't want to come back for karmic like a karmic cycle again. And yes, I'm kind of, what I've done over the last couple of years is I thought I was very much focused on one particular ideology around it, but I think things are constantly changing.
Things are constantly changing, aren't they? I'm the same. I think the pendulum has gone from one side to the other side and I've believed in both completely, but I think where I'm at now is I don't think it's a soul trap, and the reason I don't think it is a soul trap is because you've got to look at near-death experiences. People are given choice, aren't they?
Yeah.
And as we've been discussing before we went live, there's so much we need to discern because there's that much information that wasn't around 20 years ago, was it?
Absolutely.
I mean, the soul trap's a Gnostic belief, isn't it? That there's a demiurge or the archons, whatever you want to call it, are forcing souls to reincarnate over and over and over again by courtesy of the life review.
Sure.
during the death experience, and they'll tell you that you've done this wrong and you've done that wrong.
Yeah.
That you need to come back down and try again and work a little bit harder this time and clean things up that you didn't do so well last time. Again, it's very difficult, isn't it, to discern because there are valid points on each side of the argument. There really are.
Yeah. And I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because there's snippets of everything. Then you think maybe, and that kind of puts a different perspective, a different angle on what we're talking about. But what you said, and this is for me is the catalyst to everything that we're potentially going to talk about over the coming weeks and months, is the issue of discernment. And I think particularly when you are listening, and not being funny, we research a lot before we come and talk to everyone. And when we do that, you are getting such varying angles. And for sometimes I'm like, okay, interesting. I'll take a snippet of that. But then I think for me, it's always about using that discernment, because there's some, and I think, okay, I quite like, your approach, your perspective, and then they'll say something and I'm gone. I'm like, no, I can't see that. That doesn't resonate with me. And I think that discernment is key to our life review as well. And I'm like you. I don't believe we're trapped on this planet. I really don't. I believe in free will and choice. And I do think it is a school, Earth. I think it's quite a challenging school. But equally, I think when you feel you've done everything you want to do, I think you have choice. I think you have choice in your life review, and you can go, I'm done. I don't want to go back again.
Yeah. I mean, I believed in the soul trap when my life was quite difficult, so it's sort of reflective of, of the world, isn't it, as well? Don't you think it's reflective of what's going on in the world? Because a guy that, was adamant that we're in a soul trap said, oh, back in the 90s, when I was having a great time, I wouldn't have thought this. It's like, well, there you go.
Exactly.
Because your life was much better, you felt like afterlife would be much better as well. But because of current events, geopolitics, the way the consciousness of the world has gone, I think people will think that, it is a soul trap. And
for me, again, as you said, as within, so without. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about where you're at psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. That is a true reflection of the world that you create. And I am 100% convinced we create our own reality.
Well, again, if you look at near-death experiences, which is another topic that we are going to delve into, when, you know, someone's had a drug overdose, they'll have a hellish NDE.
Sure.
You know, so it actually depends on the state of your consciousness at the time that you leave your body, either temporarily or permanently. And I think that's where it comes from, because, you know, the person that just, let's say, has a car accident and they just immediately ejected out of the body,
Sure,
they have quite a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
But it always seems to be that drug overdose or the suicide
sure,
that gives you this more negative experience. So like you say, when you come out of your body, you'll think, oh, I'm trapped, or I've done this, or I've done that. And I do think it is your state of consciousness that determines where you go, what you do, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. And again, I think consciousness is such a vast topic, and again, something that we will cover at another time. But I was listening to, well, I listen to lots of people, but last weekend I was out in the garden and I was listening to a podcast, and this particular person who's very much an advocate for soul trap was talking about definitely a soul trap, and I think it's one of this argument that he always kind of filters back to, you know, about children of war.
Good point.
And there he's like, well, you know, why would they have chosen to be children of war or child abuse? Why would that have occurred? You know, and I kind of, when you think about it and you think, well, why would anybody choose suffering? But I think we all choose our own suffering. And I think people make that decision to come down, to engage in the lifestyle that they have agreed to in order to learn something. And I think the lessons will be, I think for me, we all, our biggest lesson, all of us have, for me, the same lesson to learn. How we experience that lesson is different. And I think that's when I was listening to him, I was like, but I feel like you're missing that point. I understand, but I think this particular person who I was listening, I think he's focused too much on the minutiae of the experience rather than actually they are there to learn. They have agreed to this. Yes, it's horrific, but there's obviously something within that state of war that they require in order to learn whatever, well, that lesson that, you know, they have chosen to come back and do.
I agree. I mean, you know, I've not been a child in any war, so you know, I can't comment on how horrific that would be. But I do know when I have suffered in the past, once it's over, it's over. You know, and let's say you're a child that gets blown up. You know, you're having your life and you get blown up, and you're out of your body straight away. And to the outside exterior world, it looks horrific. But from the broader perspective, once you're out of your body, it you know, again, we came back to the near-death experience, but a lot of people that come out of the body say that this isn't real. This is a game.
Absolutely.
And why did I take any of it so seriously? Have you heard of Natalie Studman?
I don't believe I have.
She was blown up in the Iraq War, and she said it was like a blink. She called it the blink environment. So she said she was in a body, she stepped on a landmine, I think it was, or no, I think a truck got blown up, and she was out of the body straight away. And then she was instantly with these other beings, and they were choosing, they told her she was going to go back, but they were choosing which injuries that she would have. And they said, I know, let's blow your arm off.
Okay.
And they were kind of all together with Natalie laughing how funny she'd look without an arm. And then they said, no, not that. Let's do that. Let's lose a leg, try that. And then she said from that perspective, it was quite amusing, because it's almost like watching a video game here.
Yeah.
And then anyway, in the end, she decided on an eye injury. So her eye was going to be injured. And she just said, you know, from the other side, it's nothing like we experience here. And everyone says the same thing. So once you're out of your body, this is not real. This has no relevance. And whatever suffering you've had, again, another lady that can see, you know, she's a seer. And she says that, like, say, for example, someone's having a car accident. Their their spirit will exit the body before impact.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of people that are kind of lending it themselves to that theory that you're out before.
You're out before, and I can remember watching those poor people jumping out of the Twin Towers back, on 9/11.
Yeah.
Watching it back years later, and again, I got the download that these people left the body before they even hit the floor.
Sure.
They'd gone, and that would make sense.
Yeah.
Why would you stick around for that? I don't think there's any actual learning in the actual physical pain and suffering.
Absolutely, I would agree.
So there's no point in you sticking around for that. The physical, but nobody's getting out of here alive. Whichever way you look at it.
We're all going the one way, aren't we?
So I think that yes, it might be a bit painful at the beginning. Again, people that have drowned, they say they felt like a pain in the chest, and then something just says to them in the mind, "Let go, let go." And then once they let go, all the pain's gone, and they've exited the body.
Absolutely.
So it's not like it would seem. I really don't think it is. And another one of my friends had a liver, pancreas, and I think a bunch of transplants. And he got a vague memory of being up in the corner of the room while the operation was going on.
Oh, okay.
And he doesn't like to talk about it, but he wasn't present in his body even though he was under anaesthesia. Yeah. Even under those anaesthetic circumstances, he wasn't in his body anyway.
Absolutely.
He was out of the body.
But doesn't that fit with astral traveling? And that some obviously are aware of where they go, but we all have that cord, and a lot of us do take off during the night hours. And that would be very similar to what he's described. It was this outer body experience, but even this, I know this is very much spiritual, but even from a psychiatric or psychological perspective, lots of people talk about disassociation.
Yes.
What's the difference? I don't see this. It's this outer body experience that you have. And again, for the people that I've worked with, disassociation is almost like a coping mechanism.
So, a spiritual coping mechanism.
100%. It's like their body and their mind cannot tolerate the level of maybe trauma,
fear.
Or all of that. So what happens to, I suppose, calm or to get some sort of respite, they have this outer body disassociated state, and it kind of gives them a bit of a respite and then come back in.
Interestingly, again, there's another woman that was involved in a bomb. It was in a train station, and she said that when the bomb went off, time slowed down. And she had got, it seemed like eons to make all these calculations of like, if I run here, this will happen. And she got time to, so it's like she came out of her body.
Yep.
And then her spirit, her soul, whatever, calculated what she needed to do to get out of there alive.
Sure.
And time kind of stopped, and she had all this within that nanosecond of that bomb being detonated and the impact hitting her.
Sure.
So this shows you that if this was a soul trap,
absolutely,
you would experience the shards of
100%.
the heat, everything going into your body, the pain, blah 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 blah, and it just shows that isn't the case at all.
But again, as you said, she had what felt like a nanosecond, had, as you said, that all of that time, which that's a lot of psychological conscious processing, isn't it? Shall I run this way? Shall I do this? Shall I do that? But, we know time is an illusion.
It's an illusion, yeah.
So while it might seem to be a second, we don't know how long that was, and time can stop.
Well, I think what happened with her, I think she actually exited the body because, when people have the near-death experience, there's no time.
Yeah.
So she exited the body in order for her higher self, soul conscience, whatever you want to call it, to make those decisions to get her out of there safely because it wasn't her time to go. So the matter and the spirit dissociated. She left the matter briefly to make these calculations, which you couldn't do in a human logical brain.
Of course. Yeah.
And then got into her body with that knowledge imbued and then went that way and avoided it because it wasn't her time to go.
Absolutely.
That wasn't her part of her life path.
Absolutely.
So,
No, I completely agree. I was listening to Dr. Christine Dullahan during the week. I hadn't heard of her before, but she's again talked about some really interesting ideologies. So for her, she recalls having a pre-birth contract, and she recalls the experience, and she, you know, what she talked about is having this kind of like a I'm going to call them a guardian. I don't believe she used that word, but she had this. For her, she said she felt it was a very masculine energy. And they talked around, you know, this is what you've agreed to, this is what you've learned, and there's the way she described it. It's a little bit quite amusing the way she said, because she's going, oh, can I stay a little bit longer? And you know, I'm quite happy here. You know, can we change? And this being is going, come on, you've agreed to this. You know, hanging around isn't really going to make your life any better. And then she said, she said I was what I was. She said, you know, I was really trying to focus my tactics to try and stay. And then she said, in the end, she said, he's, you know, this being, I'm going to say he, that's the, you know, she felt it was masculine. Was go, no, come on, it's your time now. This is what you're going to do. And she said, as they were, it sounds like it, she described it as like this big, I suppose, black hole. And she said, as she was standing close to it, she said she just felt this tap and she was gone and into the vortex. And, you know, she said what she recalled is she was going one way in the vortex, but souls coming back was in another vortex.
Oh, okay.
So she said it was a bit like, two
like
streams. Absolutely, yeah. You know all about that, don't you, today?
Northbound, southbound.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's
and that's how she described it. I thought it was really interesting. And then she said she recalled a lot of early past lives, and she said, you know, she said even when she said she recalls being even as an infant, like as in a baby, not even an infant, and people talking to her and they were going, "Oh, you're so cute, Christine," as people do, you know, over the crib, and she's like, "That's not my name. My name's Lily." Because she remembered her past life, she's like, and I prefer Lily as my name. So yeah, it was really interesting actually, because I hadn't heard that as specific as that in a pre-birth contract. You know, I haven't heard anyone talk about it in such detail.
So she remembers it. She just remembers a pre-birth contract, like sort of.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
interesting. Yeah.
Well, again, this relates again to the soul trap, because a lot of the people that are for the soul trap say, well, if it's a school, why do we need to have our memory wiped? But you couldn't retain all that information from all those other lives. How could you function here knowing all your previous lives? Because, and also if you knew that, you'd be, as soon as it got difficult, you'd be exiting the body, wouldn't you? You'd be out of here.
Yeah.
You'd be out of here. So
yeah. But you know what? And I agree 100% with what you're saying. I think we could not cope. Our human, and particularly Dolores Cannon, when she talks about, she said the human mind cannot comprehend all of the vast knowledge and ancient wisdom that is out there. We just can't. We just don't have that, I suppose,
we've got a reptilian brain, haven't we?
We absolutely have. So when she talks about, you know, the brain and, you know, that our memories are wiped, I think it's done to support us here on this earth.
Well, of course.
Otherwise, how would we cope? We wouldn't cope.
But you do have intuition, don't you? I mean, you do have intuition about things, you know. And like I say, if you couldn't keep all that information and function here, because you'd be like, well, I want to go back to that where I was, or that was so traumatic I can't get past that. Because you do get some people that have really these children that have been reincarnated, that they were, you know, a war pilot, and they can't get past, there's a certain memory that keeps coming up, and then they'll go to the place where their last incarnation died. They'll lay some flowers out, have a cry, and they'll get past it, and then they'll move on, because they've a bit of that that past life has bled through into this life.
And but I think it will, and I've experienced a little bit of that, and I think when we learn to go within, when we learn to be still, be quiet, I think you're right. I think we can start to unlock past lives and, you know, I suppose lend ourselves to kind of times and places that, and I think, you know, when people go, you know, where did that interest come from? For me, I think a lot of those, you know, interest, hobbies, I do think they're past life, you know, circumstances, situations. And so it's going back a couple of years now. and I was training to deliver its Egyptian Sekhem. It's like a form of Reiki. And so at the end of it, you kind of got this initiation with your tutor, trainer, whatever you want to call that person. And I remember being in a really deep state of consciousness at the very end of the day, where you're learning and you're absorbing. And I was in a really deep state of consciousness. And so this initiation happened, and then I kind of came round. And when I came round, the mentor that I had, she was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, that was really bizarre. I said it was really pitch black where I was. And I said, I felt myself wet, cold, like really freezing cold. And I said, and I was just I felt like I was like shimmying up this like pillar. And I said, but I don't know why, but I had to be really, really still as I shimmied up this pillar. And she was like, "Oh my God." And I went, "What?" And she said, "Have you read into Egyptian Sekhem?" And I said, "Yeah, a bit, obviously, because I wanted to be trained in it." And she said, back in Egypt, obviously Sekhem was a treatment modality that was used for a lot of the pharaohs and all. She said, but when they were trained, the healers were trained to do Egyptian Sekhem, they would go to the bottom of the pyramids, which is pitch black, and to see if you were worthy or you were a true healer, you were thrown into like a whirlpool of frozen water. But she said there was crocodiles in that. I know. Oh. I know it was really. She said, but there was crocodiles in that. So if you managed to go down and under the pillar and come back up the other side and survived, well, then you were worthy of kind of divine healer status. So she said, obviously, that is something that you recall. And again, why was I drawn to Egyptian Sekhem?
You've always been into Egypt, though, haven't you? That's always been
always and ever. So what made sense to me then, after hearing the story, after I had this kind of, and it was very vivid, you know, what I sensed was obviously the slow movement was to not alert the crocodiles. It would be the only thing that would make sense. Because obviously when you're freezing, you just want to scooch. But I remember having this sense of be really still, be really quiet, you know, just and slowly shimmer. And I remember kind of almost using my arms like to kind of guide myself up this, like it was like a big pillar type thing. Wow. And I'm like, how would I have known that? You know, it's not something, and why in this initiation would this experience, would this, you know, visualization have come back to me? Because it wasn't something I knew. So yeah, I do believe that our past lives, I think when we really start to go within, I think we can unlock some of those past lives that we have experienced. I think not all of them, but I think the very significant one. And I do feel I've definitely had a past life, and I've had that confirmed by other people I've been to. I've definitely been in ancient Egypt
at some point,
at some stage. Yeah.
But you know, again, how beneficial would that be to you right now? It's not that beneficial, is it, to know all that? So you know, we're in the present, aren't we? So this is why you know why I think we don't remember things maybe, and there's no need, is there?
Yeah, and I think now as I'm kind of starting to go into different treatment modalities, having Sekhem is helpful, something that I will use. But actually, as a kid, knowing that I had this experience in ancient, you're right. It would be futile.
It's got no relevance to this life now, has it? You know,
absolutely.
You know, let's say you were, I don't know, a psychologist in a previous life, and you're a psychologist in this life, then sure, but like they're two completely different lives, and I don't think you would have the same life, which there's no point in that. You know,
no, because it's different experiences to learn.
Completely different experiences.
Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, obviously, definitely feel that I have had a past life in Egypt, but equally, it felt like quite a nice experience there as well. When I think about that, or particularly when I connected into that, it felt it was a really positive life. Maybe that's why I remember it more. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I guess, you know, you, like I say, you'll remember what you need to remember, won't you? You know, and I've heard other people, you know, you'll have thousands of mundane lives as well, which are
100%.
very, very boring. So you
Yeah.
wouldn't remember them if you were just, you know, a very
Absolutely.
mundane life that was where nothing special or nothing significant really happened. Because
Sure.
people do have those lives,
Yeah,
don't they? You know,
absolutely. Yeah.
we can't always have the, you know, this exciting experience. And I think it's about experiencing each and aspect.
Yeah.
Every aspect of, you know, what you call life on this plane, you know.
Yeah.
I think that would make sense.
So what's your thoughts about the level of manipulation when we go for the life review?
You see, I've seen, again, I can only refer it to near-death experiences and what I've seen with them, because, you know, I don't remember any of mine. But some people do seem to have a choice with certain things. Some people have complete choice, and other people are told, you're getting back in your body and you're going to do this.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be, but wouldn't that make sense depending on your soul's evolution? Because let's say you know, you got to, there were 10 grades and you got to grade 9. I'm sure you'd be given a bit more leeway than if you're at grade 1.
That's
and
a good way of
nothing.
putting it. Yeah. I like that.
You know?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
So if you're sort of at grade 9, it's like, well,
yeah,
you can have a bit more. You've experienced quite a lot,
yeah.
So you've got a bit more sort of freedom, flexibility, and all that lot. But if you're right at the beginning, it's like, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. But again, why, if you've got free will, why would you have to do that? There is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, I do agree with what you're saying.
There's ifs. Yeah. There's pros and cons to both sides of the argument, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think, again, you know, a lot of, again, soul trap communities, you know, when people talking from that perspective, a lot of them will say, you know, people, they manipulate you, they use like you're a loved one, or a, you know, some, you know, if you're religious, they'll tap into whatever religion, you know, and use maybe deities or saints or, you know, whatever God or Allah or, you know, whoever you know
believe in.
Absolutely. And that they manipulate using that. But for me, if you have discernment for me doesn't just happen here.
Yeah.
For me, if you have discernment and you lean into, you know, really connecting with your soul and your true calling, your true purpose, and if you feel, you know what, irrespective of who you show me, I don't want to go back. I'm done. I don't think you can be forced.
Well, I mean, the Tibetan Book of the Dead says turn away from the light, doesn't it? You know, yes. It does say that. And I've heard other shamans saying, you know, don't go towards the light, because that is when you'll get sort of sucked back into it, you know. But ultimately, if there is no choice, you won't have a choice. You won't have a choice, will you?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
like, if you've got no choice, you will get sucked in one way or another. If there is some kind of demiurge or, you know, that's making this happen, you know. And then other people are saying, no, you know, if you go away from the light, you can escape out of the matrix.
Through the back door?
Through some crack in some loophole in the matrix. I don't know. But then where'd you go? What's beyond that? You know, we don't know, do we? We
really don't know.
We just don't know.
And that is the reason why we're sitting here, Alex, isn't
that
it?
is the reason.
We have no idea, and we're just here exploring and trying to come up with, I suppose, you know, just different opinions, different views that people have. As I said, we're no expert on anything, you know, we're as confused as probably most of you watching us. But I think it is a useful platform to be able to kind of think through the different theories. I think what I've noticed is you're bombarded by one or the other view, and I think this is a nice way to kind of
balance it out.
Absolutely, because we all need balance in life.
And also the algorithm will, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of us get the information from YouTube, and the algorithm will,
yes, absolutely,
whatever you're looking at most, the algorithm will suggest that, which is almost metaphorical for, you know, you create your own reality.
And I think as humans, I think we're desperate to think we're right.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you're going, oh no, I'm definitely believe in soul trap, I think you kind of almost search to justify or to back
and you'll
up.
Find evidence for that.
Of course, we can find evidence
for
for anything, can't we?
I've noticed that whenever I've strongly believed in something, I will find the evidence quite easily to support that belief. and then I can change my belief altogether, and I can find the evidence that I was wrong about that belief. So again, it goes down to we are creating our own reality.
Absolutely.
On some level, I do
Yeah.
believe that's true.
No, I would
believe
agree.
that's true.
I would agree. So can we have a bit of a consensus that we don't believe we are trapped on this earth?
I don't think that we're trapped. I don't think that we're trapped at all. I really don't. But I mean, again, I don't know. But I don't feel like I am. But again, 6 months I did believe that I was trapped, but I felt trapped in my life. So that was just a reflection of how I was feeling at the time.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I would, and as I said, I've oscillated between the two. But I think, as I'm sitting here right now, could change tomorrow, but as I'm sitting here, I do believe we have choice.
Yeah.
I believe that we contract to come down to be with the people that we are with, and that at any stage, using our discernment, that in our life review, I believe we have choice to not return.
If that's what you want to think, I think that's true. I think if you're in the middle of an incarnation like right now, and you've not fulfilled that, because you do see that in the near-death experience, where they say, "No, sorry, you got to go back." Sorry, you got to go back.
Yeah.
No, sorry. My friend Bob, who died a few years ago, he had a near-death experience, went off planet with these two huge beings, he said, and they told him he had to go back and face something, and he came back and he faced cancer, which seems very strange. Which, you might be in support of the soul trap, thinking, well, why do they need to come back and face cancer? But if you're going to come and experience love, children, heartbreak, you got to experience the bad too, haven't you? Because that makes a rounded experience.
Absolutely.
And
because I think there has to be duality. Because how can you experience one without the other? Because it's a contrast, isn't it?
It is.
And you're right. I think there has to be that.
There has to be that.
And I'm not saying that suffering is pleasant. Of course, it's not.
No, but you will learn something from it. When you will, let's say you were on your deathbed, and there's other people that will learn from that around you as well.
Of course.
Because things die, people die, and they will learn from your death.
Absolutely.
And you will learn from all the people that either gather around you or don't gather around you to assist you or comfort you. And you'll maybe find parts of yourself that you didn't realize within that sort of dying experience, maybe that slow cancer death. And I think there's going to be so much more there, because to experience it in the physical, it's different than the non-physical, isn't it? Because we can sit and eat ice cream and enjoy ice cream in the physical, but in the non-physical we can't, because we don't have a body to enjoy it. So experience all of those emotions in the physical is completely different to just knowing it all in the physical. And I think that's where the learning takes place, and that's where the juice of the experience is, in the good and the bad. Because once you're out of it, and you don't have a body, and your whole vantage point changes, doesn't it?
I completely agree.
Even though it's a strange thing to say and a strange subject to talk about, I think that is the meat and the veg of it, really.
100%.
I think.
No, I would agree. And I think, as you said, every experience, and the thing is, we're sitting here together, but we're still having different experiences.
Absolutely.
And so everyone learns from any interactions that they have, from, as you said, from various different vantage points. And I think that is the purpose of us coming down here. And also, I suppose this feeds into a karmic debt as well, and I suppose I'm going back to your analogy of the grade 1 to grade 9. And maybe, at grade 1, when you start off, maybe you have more karmic debt to work through, but the more lives and the more experiences, as you said, by the time you get further up the grading system, there's less karmic debt to deal with.
Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you come in and have a very easy life, and it gets progressively harder, so that you get used to being in a body. Possibly as well, because
absolutely.
Again, we talk about Dolores Canyon, the first wave. The first wave had a real hard time, and they just exited the body,
Absolutely.
second wave, which could be us,
I think so.
had an easier time because
Yes.
they had laid the path.
They did,
So
actually. Yeah.
it might work that way as well, or it might be easier for a new soul to come in and have a nice, pleasant life to just get used to being incarnate.
Yes. Yes.
And, like you don't feed a baby a steak, to quote Dolores Cannon.
I like that. Absolutely, absolutely. And what I remember listening to her, and she said, when people seem to have a very easy life, everything just seems to kind of come to them and flow quite readily. She said the chances are either the previous life has been pretty horrific, so they've had this is their, I suppose, respite life, or they're having rest because the next one's going to be full on.
A humdinger.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, it's all coming out.
That would make sense. That would make sense, wouldn't it? Don't you think? Because take that sort of pounding after pounding after pounding. Your soul wouldn't be able to take that. I don't think. So I think it has to be that. A good one, a bad one, a good one, a bad one, a good one, a bad one. Oh, we're done.
Yes. All sorted. Karmic debt, tick. Signed off.
Karmic all sorts.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we've kind of touched on quite a bit around what again, what people are saying from the different angles and different perspectives on the soul and soul trap or freedom, and do we have any of this? But as you said, there are obviously huge topics to kind of come out of that. Huge. And I think in itself, when you talked about the death and the experience of death, I know we're going to speak about near-death experiences in another podcast, but I think as well, talking more about that actual transition. And we have a very personal experience, haven't we? That at some stage we will tell you how we became very, very close, and how this wonderful Alex helped me through probably one of the most difficult times of my life. But again, it's very interwoven with kind of where we are now as people, but also kind of, for me, definitely started me on this spiritual journey. So I think we'll kind of focus a little bit more on that particular experience within maybe the near-death experience, or maybe a separate thing around death itself.
Yeah, that's another big one, isn't it? Another big subject.
Yes, 100%. Okay. Well, we'd just like to thank you all for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Please feel free to send us your opinions on what we've discussed, whether you're a soul trapper or whether you feel actually no, you're kind of on a different end of that spectrum, or you're somewhere in the middle, a bit like us. I think as you said, as Alex started, it's a pendulum, isn't it? So yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but also anything else you would like us to cover in future podcasts, and kind of let us know your interests.
Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Ciao for now.
Bye.